We got
Mac
a dump,
probably still
we got a
has
big dump
vehicles.
truck or something.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the School Board Trustees. We start this meeting like we do each meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we have roll call of members.
Good evening, Steve Corona from the 5th District.
Julie Hollingsworth, District 1.
Jennifer Mathias, District 2.
Ann Duff, Member.
Riley Booker, District 4.
Noah Smith, District 3.
And to my left, we have Dr. Mark Daniel, Superintendent, Fort Wayne Community Schools, and Clerk of the Board, Angie Filler. And I'm Maria Norman, Member at Large. And I think all school board members need a minute because our computers aren't on yet. Let's see. Anybody up?
Yeah.
You are? Noah, can you take the first one, please?
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is recommended the board recognize District's 2023, 2024 Teacher and Employee of the Year finalists. Then we'll show a video. Is that right? Oh, read it and then we'll show a video. I'm sorry.
You're good.
All right.
There you go.
Video first.
Oh, here we go.
I just love what I do. I mean, I love coming to work every day. They love to be read to. They like to ask questions. I love just helping the kids learn and grow, and when they become adults or, even teenagers, they come up to me and remember, so-and-so and this and that, and it just, what you helped me do, and remember the games we played, remember when you and Mrs. Rayeski would do songs with spelling tests, and I mean, just the little things like that they remember, and it brings a smile to my face. So I think this is a great place to work. I love it here, and I'm a happy kid.
My sister, from the age of 5, she knew she was going to be a teacher. She wanted to make a difference in kids' lives. She had a great experience in traditional education. I did not have that great of experience. I had certain teachers that made a difference in my life. Anything Dawn could do, I was going to try to do as well, or maybe just a little bit better. And so she was my role model. She's been my support, my inspiration on just working with children. And we were both called to the inner city. We love this environment, and so we grew up in a single-parent home, and so I can relate to a lot of my students, not in every way, but in a lot of ways. And so with that, single parents have a real special place in my heart, and I want them to know that it's safe to come and talk to a teacher, talk to an educator. That was not always the case for our mother. She was really intimidated by education. And so being a safe place not only for my kids but for their parents, so that we can partner together. And if we partner together at home and school, the kids win. That's really the goal, is for those babies to grow and win. I see it as an opportunity to make a difference. If I can make a difference in one kid's life, then it's worth it. My goal is to provide a safe, protective environment that's safe to learn, safe to make mistakes, and to grow in that. For my kids to know that they're safe and they're loved first and foremost, and then after that the learning will take place.
Honestly speaking, when I went to college the first time, I just wanted to be a journalist, and I decided to add education as my minor. After being in a classroom the first time, I fell in love with teaching because I saw the changes it brought to the students and the growth that they made in classrooms. So it meant so much for me, and I decided that probably I'm going to stick to this profession, and I've been loving it since then. This is the Young Adult Transition Program, and they're all special needs students who've been to high school for their 4 years. And after they are graduated from high school, they come to me for further training so they can be able to fit into the world and we train them in daily skills, soft skills, the social skills that they need, employment readiness, and to get them ready to be able to face the world beyond today. When I see students wanting to come to school and looking forward to coming here and learning every day, that's the icing to it all. Support our public schools. They give us a lot.
So we're going to see and hear more from those two wonderful teachers in a minute. But first, each year, Fort Wayne Community Schools request nomination from principals for the Teacher of the Year and the Employee of the Year recognition. In the spring of 2023, Fort Wayne Community Schools received more than 50 applications and narrowed them down to 14 finalists who were then interviewed by the committee. 2 teachers and 1 employee were chosen as the 2023-2024 FWCS Teacher of the Year and Employee of the Year winners. We'd like to formally recognize the finalists for their hard work and dedication to the students of the district. So for our elementary teacher of the year, teachers of the year finalists, as I read your name, please come forward. Jared Floto, 3rd grade teacher at Studi Elementary. Caitlin Huffman, 1st grade teacher, South Wayne Elementary. Amy Stevenson, 1st grade teacher, St. Joe Elementary. And Rosemary Suddeth, kindergarten teacher at Levon Scott Academy. For our, do you want to keep going, or just have to do pictures now? All right. For our second Dairy Teachers of the Year, which includes middle and high school finalists, we have Reba Irvin, biology teacher at Northrop High School. Josie Gorman, math teacher at Tolles New Tech Middle School. Melanie Rice, process teacher, Amplab. Amy Schmitz, graphic design teacher, Northside High School. And Katie Shepard, ELL teacher at Southside. And last but certainly not least, some of the people that make this all happen and make these teachers look as great as they are is Employee of the Year finalists. Elizabeth Elick, classroom assistant, Studi Elementary. And I know principals will tell you these are the people behind the secret sauce that make them magic. Tamika McGraw, secretary, Weiser Park Elementary. These are our 2023-2024 finalists for Teacher and Employee of the Year winners. Congratulations.
And next on the agenda is Teacher of the Year. It is recommended that the board recognize young adult transition teacher Christabel Emma Adhiambo and Brentwood Elementary School teacher Shelley Kale Burden as the district's 23-24 Teacher of the Year winners. In the spring of 2023, FWCS received submissions from principals for Teacher of the Year for the Teacher of the Year honor. Committees were established to focus on either elementary or secondary nominees, with each committee selecting finalists to interview. After the interviews, each committee chose their respective Teacher of the Year. The 23-24 FWCS Elementary Teacher of the Year is Shelley Kale Burden, a 3rd grade teacher at Brentwood Elementary School, and the 23-24 FWCS Secondary Teacher of the Year. We all know and love her as Miss Emma, but she's Christabel Emma Adhiambo, the young adult transition teacher at the FWCS Career Academy. Just want to let them both know that we are honored to have you be a part of our district. And please come forward now so we can congratulate you and take pictures. It's first grade.
Feel free to come on down and get
Yeah.
pictures.
And next up, we have the Employee of the Year. It is recommended that the board recognize Maplewood Elementary School Classroom Assistant Tanya Exley as the district's 2023 Employee of the Year winner. In spring of 2023, FWCS received submission from principals for the Employee of the Year honor. 18 staff members were nominated for the honor. The Human Resources Department reviewed the nominations and chose 18-year employee Tanya Exley, classroom assistant at Maplewood Elementary School, as the 2023 Employee of the Year. Ms. Exley, we are honored to have you be a part of our district. Please come forward so we may congratulate you.
Congratulations.
Next up, we have the IDOE STEM School Certification for Memorial Park Middle School and Weiser Park Elementary School. It is recommended that the board recognize the staff, students, family, and community of Memorial Park Middle and Weiser Park Elementary for being awarded the Indiana Department of Education STEAM School Certification. The IDOE has awarded STEAM School Certification to, STEM school certification to Memorial Park and Weiser Park for demonstrating a comprehensive STEM-based program, science, technology, engineering, and math for students. Although the certification is a STEM certification, both schools are putting the A in STEM and are proud of the fine arts magnet programming and integration with STEM and continuing the STEAM focus pre-K through 8th grade. Representatives from the school are here this evening, including Memorial Park Principal Brad Crozier and Weiser Park Principal Melissa Plum, to answer any questions that we may have. Please come forward as your school name is called so that we may congratulate you. Memorial Park Middle School. Congrats. Did you want Mr. Lucky to come up? Yes.
We have Sia Falk here as well.
Oh, yeah. We have Sia Falk and Mr. Lucky from Memorial Park as well. Congratulations. Next, we have Weiser Park Elementary School Principal Melissa Plum. And then we have Mr. Porter, Mr. Osada, Miss Nicholson, Mrs. Thomas. Yes, congratulations. I do have a comment and a question. Mr. Crozier, I saw that the STEAM letters were put up on the side of Memorial Park and they look gorgeous. Can you tell us a little bit about the application process that you had to go through to receive this designation?
I'll invite Mel up if she wants to join and answer some questions with me. But yes, it's a multi-year process. So we really started the work probably a good 5 or 6 years ago, pre-COVID time, in really building our program. As you mentioned, it is a STEM certification from the IDOE, but with our long history in fine arts, that's where we went with the STEAM approach. There's a multifaceted rubric that we had to work towards, 4 domains, and we had to receive upwards to, I think it was 65 points or so across all 4 domains. So culture, instruction, partnerships, and community, I think, were the 4 areas. It also included an on-site visit where folks from the IDOE came out and walked through our classes, walked through our programs, and really checked us out, and had conversations not only with us, but students and staff as well.
We created websites that we can share with you that has each documentation that we had to provide the IDOE. And they're also on the IDOE website.
Okay, awesome. Any other questions? Do you have the STEAM letters at Weiser as well? I haven't driven past.
Hopefully soon we will.
Okay, cool. They look very nice at Memorial Park, so.
I know that from the Irwin, I saw the work that she had to put, what they had to put into to doing theirs last year. So thank you for that time and devotion of putting that giant rubric and presentation together. I know it's a feat, and I know it's above and beyond what you do on your daily. So thank you very much.
Yeah. And I would push it back on our teachers. I mean, they did an amazing job. We had the honor and privilege of sort of showcasing all of our teachers' work, but when it came to our walkthrough, it was really showing the classrooms and the kids working, and they did an amazing job. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that is the end of awards and recognitions, which moves us to the consent agenda. And that is approval of minutes from the regular meeting on August 28th, vouchers and payroll approval, the personnel report, and required disclosures. Is there a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Ann. Thanks, Noah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Dr. Daniel, was there? No, okay. No old business, so we move on to new business. Subaru Loves Learning. It is recommended that the board accept the grant to Weiser Park Elementary School from Subaru Loves Learning for $10,000. Fort Wayne Subaru has awarded Weiser Park Elementary School with the Subaru Loves Learning grant. Subaru continues their support of education in our communities through Subaru Loves Learning by providing teachers across the country with funding to purchase the school supplies and resources they know are most needed to help students thrive in the classroom. Weiser Park teachers plan to use these funds to purchase STEAM materials for their classrooms. And Ms. Plum is still available to answer any of our questions. Is there a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Raleigh. Thanks, Jennifer. Any questions for Ms. Plum?
Is this the 3rd year that you've received this
That's
award?
amazing.
And last year, what did you do with it? Was it like a garden or some sort of thing? What sort of projects have you done in the past?
The first year we won it, we bought a greenhouse to start. Last year we used it for classroom materials, and this year will also be for classroom materials. Each teacher gets a set amount of money, and they use it for open-ended materials to do our PBL projects.
Cool stuff?
Yeah.
What is it stuff that you can't get at Target or?
Well, some things you could get at Target. I think the coolest thing right now that we are working on is this month we are installing a disc golf in Weiser Park behind us. The 4th grade and now who are 5th graders have worked with the Fort Wayne Parks Department. They've designed it, the Parks Department has okayed it, and we're getting ready to install.
Cool.
Well, that's neat. Sounds great.
Love it.
That's a true project-based learning, huh?
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And thank you to Fort Wayne Subaru. That's awfully nice of them. So. All right. Next up, we have the IDOE Educational Excellence Awards. It is recommended that the board recognize Weiser Park teacher Brandon Porter for for receiving the Promising Educator Excellence Award and approve the acceptance of the Educational Excellence Award in Community Collaboration for AMP Lab at Electric Works in the amount of $107,250 from the Indiana Department of Education. Weiser Park teacher Brandon Porter and AMP Lab at Electric Works were recognized on September 8th at the 2023 IDOE Educational Excellence Gala. Mr. Porter received the Promising Educator Excellence Award, which was given to teachers with 1 to 5 years of experience who proactively engage in professional development and seek out opportunities to learn from other educators. AMP Lab at Electric Works was recognized as the statewide exemplar for community collaboration at the 2023 Educational Excellence Gala. This competitive award was given to AMP Lab at Electric Works for their work to develop strategic local and state partners, prioritizing partnerships that foster the creation of collaborative solutions and expansion of high-quality learning opportunities. In 22-23, AMP Lab at Electric Works students collaborated with over 80 businesses, organizations, and agencies and worked with over 200 industry experts. The funds from this award will go to enhance the student experience and programmatic implementation at AMP Lab. Brandon Porter, teacher at Weiser Park, and Riley Johnson, assistant principal of AMP Lab at Electric Works, will be available to answer any questions. Is there a motion on the floor? Thanks, Ann.
Second.
Thanks, Noah. Any questions for Mr. Porter or Mr. Riley Johnson?
Mr. Porter, Riley's getting $107,250. You can get $1 out of this?
I got my own money. I got $2,500.
Oh, you did?
Oh, there you go. Nice.
And he gets to keep his.
Oh.
They gave me a giant check. They came out Oprah style.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Very fun.
Nice.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Riley, what's on your shopping list? We just heard Mrs. Plums.
No. I'm just happy to keep Kathy and Rosie happy because I feel like every time I'm here, it's about bringing money into the district. No, I think for us, last year was really about setting the foundation, and year 2 is really about forward trajectory. And so we've got some ideas cooking in the oven that we think these funds will just continue to enhance what that experience for students looks like at AMP Lab.
How many students do you have this year?
Yeah, so we have 375, so up about 40 from where we ended last year, and that's a mix of we got about a little over 60 second-year students, and then the rest are new students to AMP Lab. So a good mix from the 5 schools.
Great. That was my next question. How many are returning from last year?
Yeah, and that's been fun because I think the individualized aspect. So of those, I think it's 62. It's 62 very, very different experiences this year, and so we have some out in work-based experiences, some in internships, some are working on their own businesses, and so it's a cool kind of blended experience for those kids with the new first year, because they kind of have to set the tone, but also the first year kids get to kind of push back in terms of what's possible.
Brandon, I'm curious as to what you did. It might inspire other new teachers to do something they've been thinking about that maybe they thought was too crazy or wacky. And so what did you do? Can you go to the microphone and tell us?
Well, I was nominated by my principal, Mrs. Plum, so I don't know exactly why she nominated me, but I read what she wrote about me, and I suppose that I kind of dropped into this profession by happenstance. I did transition to teaching to get to the job that I'm in, and I think the opportunity that I have at Weiser Park is very different than what a lot of elementary school teachers get, and that I'm working at an arts magnet school, and I am the drama teacher. So the arts magnet thing, that's very one of a kind. But then the elementary drama teacher thing is one of a kind. I don't think that there's a single other one in the state other than me. And I also serve as the school's fine arts magnet coordinator, so I kind of am overseeing the whole arts program. All of that stuff leaves me in a very unique position where I get to just do some absolutely incredible things with students every day. Teaching drama at the elementary level is such a unique, incredible thing. I'm able to teach students some skills about themselves that a lot of students are never tapping into at the elementary level because they don't have that outlet to be in front of others making their voice heard like I get to do with them. And I think that that opportunity just has kind of made me kind of stand out as an educator. And so even if you're not an educator that is teaching drama, I suppose doing those sorts of very unique things with students that I'm getting to do, if you can do that in your classroom, I'm not doing anything really groundbreaking. It's just that it's unique what I get to do.
You're an actor?
I am, yes. I do. So I do a lot of local community theater stuff. That was one of the elements of this, is the professional development outside of the classroom and how I'm engaged in the community. I do a lot of community theater type stuff.
Are your children uninhibited?
Many of them, yes, very much so. We put on some absolutely incredible productions at Weiser Park. We do a full-scale 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade musical. Our 5th grade one being very reminiscent of like a middle school musical. We do it at Southside on the stage, and it's we just have these kids that show up and do some of the most miraculous things. I didn't know little kids could act in the way that we can get some of our students
So
to.
you're just really steering that energy.
That's what I try to do every day. That's why I'm in this job. I was a student at Weiser Park. I came back to Weiser Park for that reason. I just want to inspire students to do, what I'm doing. I'm only where I am today in my profession and my professional life and my artistic life because of Weiser Park, 100%. And I hope every day that I can inspire at least 1 or 2 students to maybe be where I am today.
So I had the opportunity to talk to Ms. Plum a little bit earlier about you, and she was very proud. I think she said you referred to her as her big sister, maybe? I don't know. Different. But she too was a Weiser Park student, as I recall. So
Yeah.
What were you doing before the transition to teaching, if you don't mind?
I got my degree in music direction for musical theater, and I had a dream that maybe I'd move to New York or Chicago or a big theater market and do like the Broadway thing. I ended up back in Fort Wayne working with a professional theater company here in town for several years, and when I got out of that, I found myself jobless, and I was like, I'll be a substitute. So I came to the district, and my very first day of substitute teaching was in this drama position for the person who was in that position before me. And after being there for 5 days, the former principal, Kent Martz, said, I need you to apply for this job. Please do transition to teaching. I think you need to spend your life doing this. And it's the greatest decision I've made in my life.
So I'm sure your big sister, Ms. Plum, has encouraged that. What would you say if you were a big brother to somebody to encourage them to become a teacher like you experienced, not starting that path, but then ending up this path?
Sure. I think that I always kind of had this thing inside of me where I liked to teach. When I do the musical theater, music direction stuff, you're teaching. That's an active teaching thing. So I knew that I liked to do that, but I didn't know that, public schools or anything like that would be of any interest to me. I was very scared of it. But when I dropped into it and I saw the impact that you can have on a child's life and the miraculous things that you can see them do as young people, it just changed me. I knew right away in my very first class that I taught that first day, just getting those kids to do a fun drama exercise, but getting to see them be expressive in the way that they were. I didn't know kids could really do that. I hadn't been seeing it firsthand. And education just has touched my heart in a way that nothing else I've ever been involved in has touched me. So be an educator. It's life-changing.
I think that, Brandon, we need to have you in a commercial for.
I would love to. Send me an email.
Scott,
We'll
you hear
remember
that?
Yeah.
Krista? Fabulous. I think you're a wonderful spokesperson for making that transition, and those children at Weiser Park are very lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Riley, I have one more question. You won the 2020 Educational Excellence at the gala. That was our first year of that school. Is that the first time this award's been given away, or?
Yeah, it's the
Second.
second year.
But last year, was it a school that had just begun? Is it, I mean, those part of that criteria, or?
So actually last year the categories were different. And so when the DOE launched this, I think they had the goal to change their focus. So this was the first year that this category existed. And I think, as Shanita, Dr. Daniel, and I were down there, I think in a selfish way, I think we were the only program of our noviceness to be represented there. So that was exciting.
That's quite an accomplishment, and thank you for everything you do there.
Thanks.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. Okay. That brings us to vehicle.
Still more exciting board information.
Next on the agenda is vehicles for maintenance and operations. It is recommended that an award be made to the lowest responsible and responsive vendor meeting specifications and quality standards. And the contract goes to O'Daniel Ford of Fort Wayne for the amount of $238,804. This purchase is for one Ford Transit, two Ford F-350 trucks, and one Ford F-550 dump truck. These vehicles will replace older units that are due for replacement. The total includes a trade-in amount of $12,000. Invitations to quote were mailed to 3 prospective vendors, with 1 responding. This purchase will be funded from the Operations Fund, and Pete Smith, Manager of Maintenance and Operations, will be available to answer any questions. Is there a motion on the floor?
Second.
Thank you, everyone. Are there any questions for Pete?
How many units do we trade in?
It was like for like.
Okay. So in 4 vehicles, we got 12 grand worth of value?
That's why we're trading them in.
More now.
What year are those trade-in?
They're fairly old. For example, that dump truck, it hauls salt, rocks, mulch and stuff, and so that bed was entirely rusted out. And so just from a safety standpoint, that truck too is the majority, I shouldn't say the majority, the most expensive vehicle of those 4. We've had to wait a number of years to fit that in the budget because our daily use vehicles are more important to us in the overall scheme of things. So I think the last time I was up there, I talked about our 3-year schedule and how we slide things in and out of that. And this one just got to the point where we had to slide it up. So luckily, we worked with budgeting and figured out a way to make it fit within next year's budget.
Nice.
How soon will we be able to get these vehicles?
It'll be 4 really different time frames, really 3 because we're getting 2 F-50s. So the dump truck will take the longest because it'll be manufactured and then fit out with a specific dump bed on it. But the trucks, the 350s will come quickest. The transit will probably be spring of next year. So hopefully, realistically, May of next year, we'll have all the vehicles.
Okay.
Best case scenario.
That dump truck in time to haul around all the salt?
Well, not this winter we won't.
No.
No, so we have other smaller beds because we have 3 salt routes in the winter that we put a salt spreader on the back of those. So we'll just kind of finagle our way through this winter, and we'll utilize that in certain instances, but mainly as a backup because it's a larger truck. We keep the tonnage low enough so we don't need a CDL license to have the driver drive that vehicle. So there's some consideration to that, why we chose that particular vehicle.
So all these are brand new vehicles?
They will be new, yes, sir.
And then you mentioned CDL. Do you have requirements for CDL drivers in your group?
Not in our group, no.
Okay. Will this dump truck have any new fangled things, the salt, the mulch, the dark, the rain, the winter?
Not the chassis itself. So the dump bed that we're having manufactured is a stainless bed. It should last longer. And it's not really, there's really no any new technology that will go in that related to the dump bed itself.
I'll beat you up before we see Renee up here. Maybe it's electrical vehicles, electrical trucks, Ford F Lightning or whatever. Is that, I mean, I know they're not cheap, but is there a cost savings benefit to looking at those these days?
Not yet for us, because from the charging stations and the amount of, for example, some of our larger trucks, the power they use, the batteries that are being currently manufactured, it just doesn't make sense for us, along with the infrastructure it takes to build up charging stations and things like that. I think transportation has started to look into that, but I don't know exactly where they're at with their discovery process as well. But we have looked into it, but talking to all our vendors, we're just not quite there yet for the types of vehicles that we need. The transit vans would probably be the first piece because those are the lightest. Those are 1 ton capacity. So we could potentially look at those, but the cost yet just doesn't justify where we're at.
Gotcha, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
Sure.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, next up on the agenda is extracurricular accounts and second semester for 22-23. It is recommended that the board accept the extracurricular account reports for the second semester of the 22-23 school year. Indiana Code 20-41-1-8 requires an accurate account of all money received and expended by extracurricular accounts. All extracurricular semester reports are audited by the business office and are available for inspection for 10 years. Kathy Friend, Chief Financial Officer, will be available for questions. Is there a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Thanks, Raleigh. Thanks, Ann. Any questions for Kathy? Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Next up is the budget report for 2024. Chief Financial Officer Kathy Bren will present a report that describes the year 2024 budgets for the Education Fund, Operations Fund, and the 2 debt funds, debt service and referendum debt. The school safety operating referendum budget will also be presented in anticipation of a positive vote on November 9th. If it does not pass, the Department of Local Finance will not consider it. The public budget hearings will be held on October 9th, 2023. Board action is scheduled for these budgets on October 23rd, 2023. And I turn it over to Ms. Kathy Friend.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Daniel and School Board, I present to you my 24th and final budget tonight. And you know you're in good hands because Rosie Shipman came from Weiser Park, you know. So all good things come from Weiser Park, so there you go. Okay. And you should have gotten an update today because some things might have changed since then we last talked, so you'll have an update there at your spot. Okay, so these are the things we'll talk about this evening, and this gives you the calendar. The budget will be approved by October 23rd because it must be approved by the end of October by statute. And these are the things that you will approve on the final night. There will be resolutions with all of these particular topics included, so these are the things that we'll be speaking about here. And I'll start out with the revenue for the Education and Operations funds. Those are the largest funds that we have. And the first thing I'll talk about is tuition support and the basic grant formula, because tuition support is the largest amount of dollars that we receive. And the foundation is the same amount that's provided to all school districts in the state, the same per pupil amount. And I just wanted to note here that in this budget that was just approved by the legislature, there is a 5.7% increase the first year and a 1.4% increase the second year in the foundation. The complexity is provided based on the poverty of students within a school district, and so that formula also did increase. It is the number of students that are direct certified by the state multiplied times a specific factor, and the factor is what went up. So the factor for 22-23 was 3,775. That goes to 3,983, and that's a 5.5% increase. And then in 24-25, it goes up an additional 1% increase to 4,024. So those are not the dollars we get per pupil, but those are multiplied by the number of students in poverty. So when we talk just about complexity, I'm going to start with that one. Complexity, we get about $30.5 million in complexity dollars, and that is to support non-foundational expenditures. So if you think about, all of our students that have special needs that may not be in a school district with low poverty, those are what those dollars are intended for. Unfortunately, because we have a couple of areas that are not fully funded, ELL and special education, we consider that part of the need to have that complexity revenue is to fund those two particular areas. So about half of it really is necessary to go towards those areas that are not fully funded right now. So even though those areas did receive increases this year, those are things that we need to always continue to advocate for, that they continue to increase funding for ELL and special education to get to a fully funded, those categories fully funded. I know this is really difficult to read here on this slide, so I'm going to just kind of lead you through some important numbers on here. Sure.
How do you figure we're underfunded? Could you talk about that? We talked
In those categories? Yeah. So what we do is we look at the total revenue that goes into the education fund for ELL learners or special education, and we compare that to the total amount we spend in the education fund. I'm not considering the federal grant, because the federal grant 100% pays for the item special ed needs. This is the part that's in the education fund. And so of those dollars that we get from the state, that's how much additional we have to put in towards those programs. So on this page, the part that's in peach is the part that tells you what the poverty measurement is that's used in the formula by the legislature. And I put some history at the bottom left there so you can kind of see what has been happening over time. And I've shared this with you many times. It's sort of confusing. Initially, we were able to also compare to free and reduced lunch prices, or excuse me, free and reduced textbooks. But because there won't be that category anymore, since families will be getting free textbooks, we won't have that as a comparison. But to tell you, at the end of 2023, that number was 70%. The direct certified rate for the district was 64.5%. So that could mean that there were families who were eligible for direct certified benefits but didn't apply. That could have been the difference between those two numbers. But the direct certified means SNAP, TANF, foster care, and Medicaid. So those numbers come directly from the state. But what was used in the formula for poverty for us at the end of last year was only 29%. So one of the things we know for sure that they take out is Medicaid. So that's part of the difference. But when you consider that back in 15-16, that number was 38.5%, and now it's 29%, that's just is very confusing. It doesn't seem like it's right. And I think this is, again, something else that needs to be continued to pay attention to. We have been involved in a study where this is trying to be examined, but we have not gotten a good answer on what that difference is. So I've got Rosie on the job here to try to figure that out. That's one of her first things. So then the poverty measurement is multiplied by that column in yellow, or excuse me, that's the adjusted. In some years there were some adjustments made. So then if you take the yellow times the blue, which is the factor, then you'll get what the complexity amount is per pupil. So if you compare back in 15-16 in the green, that number was $1,303, and today that number is $1,121. So the per pupil amount in complexity has gone down 14% since 2015-16. Now this number is unique to FWCS because this is based on our poverty. So every school district would have a different number than what we have. And then this chart shows you the foundation and the complexity over to the left-hand side there and what the total of those numbers would be. So foundation actually grew 35% since 15-16. Complexity went down 14%. So overall, we have had an increase of 25% in the per pupil amount, which on average is about a 2.9% increase per year. So, and then the chart at the right just shows you the graph that you can see how the complexity is the bottom line there that's been slowly declining, which keeps the top line from not increasing as much as the foundation.
So you know that we're below the average CPI change, consumer price index.
That's right. So, and I did get the look at the CPI change at the end of this past school year, and so actually if you look at prior to the next 2 years that the legislature approved, the average before that was 2.3%, and that compared to a 3.5% CPI change, average CPI change. So we have not been keeping up with the consumer price index.
The change of most goods and services.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's what I used. Yep. This chart then shows you enrollment because the per pupil amount has to be multiplied times enrollment in order to figure out what our total funding is. So this shows you what enrollment was as of today, and it is down only 37 kids compared to last year from our official enrollment. So I would call that pretty stable. And we're happy that it's only down 37. The amount funded, though, is based on a different formula, and what it does, it takes the total and then reduces it preschool from that number. So we're actually up 13 on the funded piece of that. So again, I think this is a pretty stable picture, and so we can be happy for that. The remainder of the tuition support formula has these components to it. And again, this is all went through the legislature in the last session, and these are the things that were debated when they put the budget together. The first thing is special education, and that has gone up about $1 million for us, a 5% increase this year and a 5% increase the following year. So each of those categories, the exceptionalities, each one of those categories went up 5%. The NESP, non-English speaking program, you may recall that Emily would come here and ask you to approve that particular grant. That grant will no longer be outside the school funding formula. It will now be inside the school funding formula. And so that is part of why the education fund budget would be higher, is because we absorbed that into the budget along with the revenue. So that's an impact of about $1.7 million for the budget I'm presenting to you today. And then career and technical education, that budget's up $5.2 million. Some of the categories went up 5%, but not all of them. The categories that were high-value courses went up 5%. And then honors diploma, there was no change in honors diploma. It is still the same as it has been. So now we go to the operations fund. The revenue for the operations fund is mostly property taxes. There are some other revenue sources in there, but mostly property taxes. And the annual increase has been based on the 5 years non-farm income increase. And it still is, except that now you're limited to a 4% increase. So our number in 2024 is, of course, 4%. If it would come out lower than 4%, we'd get lower than 4%. But the minimum or the maximum that you can get is now 4%. So our total levy expected is $65.5 million, and then we'll have a loss in dollars from the tax caps. So we expect to have about $60 million is what we'll have in the operations fund. And the next chart just gives you a reminder of what has happened with the circuit breaker over the years. We peaked out pretty much in 2014, and then it's stayed fairly level since then. But our loss is generally about $5.5 million a year, which if you add all those years together is $93 million, which is no small potatoes there. I mean, that's part of the reason why we have to borrow money for facilities projects, because of the circuit breaker.
So to be clear, if we did not have the circuit breaker, we may, not guaranteed, but may not have to seek the referendums to raise taxes for buildings, for safety, for those other?
Maybe to the tune of $93 million. I mean, our referendums have exceeded $93 million, but maybe we wouldn't have had to do one of those if we had not had this occur. So, yeah. And this will not end. So it's just, we have to live with that. And so this chart gives you total revenue for the two funds. And so the education fund, when you take the total dollars, or the per pupil dollars times enrollment, we get the $241 million. That also includes the special ed and all those other things that I showed you on that came from the school funding formula. $241 million. We have a little bit of miscellaneous revenue. And then in the operations fund, the property taxes is $60 million. That's net of the circuit breaker. We also, any fund that collects property taxes also gets excise and financial institutions tax, and commercial vehicle excise tax. So that's $5 million added on. This is the fund also where we deposit interest income and indirect cost. And interest income, we're not positive where that's going to go, but we did show a little bit of a decline there in interest income for #24. Indirect costs, those are the dollars that we get from our federal grants that help us support the operations of the district, so those are really beneficial to us. The reason that number is so high in 2023 is because of basically the ESSER grants have really increased that number, and because the ESSER grants end in September of '24, we expect to see a decline in that revenue source in 2024. And in a normal year, without all these ESSER grants, you might see total indirect cost of maybe $1.7 million or $1.8 million, so you can get a feel for how substantial and important that was. So when we look at our 5-year outlook, one of the things we have to consider is what's going to happen to this revenue picture. And then at the bottom, it's necessary for us to transfer dollars from the education fund into the operations fund because there's not enough dollars in the operations fund to support that budget. And so the state has set this up, that's how you make it all work. And we're budgeting a $10 million transfer from the education fund to the operations fund. We do think it might be a little lower than that, but we want to make sure that we're prepared in case we need to transfer the entire $10 million, which is only about 4% of state support. And that's really a positive thing because the state has set up a limit of 15% is what they've determined that you have to come forward and explain yourself. So we're well below that 15% number. So that's very positive.
Do you remember how much we did last year?
In 23, we're only transferring $6 million. And part of the reason for that is because of all that indirect cost revenue that we're getting, we don't need to transfer as much to support the operations fund. Because what we try to do is have level cash balances in the two funds, not in terms of dollars, but in terms of the percentage of budget. So when you do that, that's how we decide what we're going to put in that transfer. So because of that positive situation we have in the operations fund, we haven't had to transfer as much. So the expenditure budget is next, and I've categorize these in red and purple just so you can see in the rest of this, you'll know which one's education fund and which one's operations fund. And the state has a chart of accounts that everyone uses in the whole state to have consistency in how expenses are tracked. So that's what these things are. And then on the next slide, you can see how we compare to the state average. Now, this information is dated, but it's the best that I can get from the state at this point. But this shows you, when you look at the red numbers compared to the FWCS compared to the state, that we are above the state in the dollars that we spend on student instruction. And now I will say part of the reason for that is because of the Title I dollars we get are higher than what some lower poverty school districts would have. So we should be higher than the state average based on the dollars that we get. So this is the combination of the two funds, and about 73% of the budget is in education and 27% in operations. And in the education fund, if you were to look at all the expenses in the education fund, almost all of it, about 92%, goes to those areas over to the left-hand side. So the things that are in a school building. The education fund does not pay for things basically in Grile, like curriculum or Dr. Daniel even. So this is just expenditures that are at the schools.
And we talk about fringe, that means benefits?
Yes,
And
yes.
most of that is within the name of health insurance?
It's, yes, health insurance and the ISTRF, the pension, and of course FICA, those kind of things. But the bulk of it, yes, is health insurance. And then in the operations fund, these are the categories of the budget that are most predominant. And you can see transportation is about 15.6 million, capital projects 18.2, custodial and the supplies that go with custodial are about 12.8 million, utilities 8.3 million. And then the wages and fringes in this budget would include all the people basically that are not in the education fund or not in some grant. Would be in that dark blue piece of pie there. So when we look at just the capital projects fund, we do have 62 buildings in the school district to take care of. And this is how the facilities department has decided to prioritize spending of the dollars that we've allocated to them. And 8.7 million would go to building improvements. 2 million for equipment, and so on and so on. You can see the building equipment and repair, 4.7 million. So they develop a 3-year budget, and starting with the 18,250 to try to plan for the future and be really have a high awareness of what buildings need attention next that aren't maybe getting addressed in one of the other bond issues we're doing or ESSER. And so that's how he decides how things are going to be taken care of. And then this is kind of an odd thing that we have to do, but because you're going to have to approve this, I wanted to put this out there. We have to provide not only do we have a 3-year plan that's comprehensive, we also have to have a 3-year plan that only identifies things that are $10,000, over $10,000. So those are projects that are considered capital in nature and capital assets, and you can see the definitions there of how that's decided. One thing I'll point out, that projects that are considered capital in nature, the second to last bullet there tells you that the budget is limited to 2.7% of the operations fund can go to school sports facilities. So there's a real limitation on what we can do with school sports facilities. And then you can see that what we do have in the plan is to continue with turf installation. Southside actually just was finished, and then Northside and Snyder would be next. And then this is what that plan looks like that we would have you approve and also submit to the state. Transportation fund, this is an update of the current fleet. We now have a total of 225 buses, and you can see the numbers there about the number of students eligible to ride and how many are currently riding and so forth. And then this is the budget for transportation. About 75% of this budget is for the people that run the operation, bus drivers, bus assistants, mechanics, and in addition, their fringe benefits as well are in orange there. And then the other expenses are maintenance and fuel and insurance and so forth. And then this budget, the part that's in peach there, we are required to do a 5-year bus replacement plan. This slide shows you the entire inventory in transportation. We have 225 buses, as I mentioned. That's down 74 buses from 2022. So we are selling buses and not purchasing any in 2024. And as you can see, there's only 28 being purchased in the entire 5-year plan, and that's because the 12-year buses have been sold, and so we won't have as many older buses to sell during that 5-year plan. And next is debt, and the orange line there represents the debt service fund, and the blue line represents the referendum debt. So you can see in the debt service, what's included in there is new tech loans, state technology loans, which are the CSF and STAA loans, as well as the general obligation bond that the board recently approved. And then in total, you can see total debt service is about $40 million, and that is maintaining that tax rate of 0.3028, which the board committed to when we did the 2012 referendum. We do have some things coming up. In 24 and 25, we will be selling issues 4 and 5 for the 2020 referendum, with the last payment expected to be in 2044. The general obligation bond is actually going to be sold tomorrow, and we will continue to seek technology loans annually as the state allows that. And the summary of this, then, what this slide shows you is our typical funds, the Education Fund and Operations Fund, and I've got a yellow line there on the total. We expect that property tax rate to go down 3.5%, and really that is the whole portion, the whole bill we expect to go down 1.8%, and of that 3.5% is from the Education Operations Fund. The debt would be an increase of 1.7%. But what we're benefiting from here is that our assessed value and our boundaries has gone up by 9.6%. We did get our number recently, so that is helping lower that, that tax rate. So then the next topic, this is a new topic that we need to talk about tonight that we haven't talked about in past budgets, and that is the school safety referendum. And as it was stated in the board rec, even though we don't have the vote yet until November the 7th, in the meantime, the board does need to approve this so that we've crossed all our T's and dotted our I's, so that when it passes, we will be prepared for the state to accept this budget. So, as you know, it was approved on June the 12th with a maximum rate of 10 cents. And so we're looking at a budget, though, instead of $7.2 million. So if it had been at 10 cents, that would have been a $12 million budget. At 6 cents, it would be about a $7.2 million. So we really looked at the spending plan to determine what is it that we can accomplish in 2024 and not borrow the full amount that was approved. So I'm not sure what that will look like in 25 or 26. Every year will have to be evaluated to determine what the correct number is. But in 24, with the average home of $167,235, we're looking at an average increase of $54 per year rather than the $76 that we previously had approved.
So the big thing on the 10 cents is it gives us flexibility, is that right? And so if we have the need, the citizenry says, yes, we support the referendum, and if we have the need, we can go up to 10 cents. We're not obligated to go up to 10 cents.
Exactly.
And if we can manage, fiscally be responsible and go lower, we certainly will.
Yep. Yep.
Thank you.
Exactly. And I think it's also important for everybody to know what the impact is to a total tax bill. That's why I noted that. This would be about a 4% increase to the total tax bill. When folks go to the ballot, they will see a tax increase that looks much higher than that, because that number is based on just the FWCS portion of the bill as well as the full 10 cents. So that could be confusing to people. But if you look at what we're intending to have you approve this first year, we're looking at that 4%. And this is, again, this is small, I know, but this is to show you what we've decided. So the first column would represent the maximum budget if we went all the way up to $12 million, and then the second column shows you what happens when we ask for a lower amount, or $7.2 million. And then it was suggested by some board members to add that third column, which shows you what the 2024 security budget is in the operations fund, and the total for that budget is only $3 million. So when you think about the fact that we could get $7.2 million in additional money through the referendum to add to $3 million, you can see that we can make some real impact to making our schools safer. And so with that $3 million budget that we're funding in the operations fund, that would take us up to a total of $10.2 million.
And remind me, school resource officer, those are typically police officers of
Yes.
some sort, through the city or the county, right? And so we'd be more than doubling them to 22.
Yep.
And so while they also get a city or county paycheck as an officer, we have to pay for them.
We pay
It's not like they just say, sure, go on over to Fort Wayne Community Schools and hang out, right?
No, we pay a contract to the city for that. Yep. Okay, so this is news we need to at least be aware of. So if the vote would fail, then the budget, the DLGF will just not consider this budget. So that it's no problem in that way. And then if the school board wanted to come back and do this again, you can come back in 700 days, just like you did at this time. Or if you want to come back sooner, within 350 days, that's possible. But you have to have a petition drive in order to do that.
And so the DLGF wouldn't accept this portion of the budget, not the whole budget, right? That's your point here?
The $7.2 million, right. Because that's what we will submit to them. That's what you will approve on the final night, is the $7.2 million. So, and this is another subject that we should talk about, and I did talk about this a little bit last year, but it was more for informational purposes. But tonight, there's an impact to our other budgets. And as a reminder, this is how much federal support we got. FWCS got about $156 million in total support. We also received another $1.8 million that we had to share with non-pubs. And this chart shows you how we spent the money, or are spending the money, because we haven't spent it all yet. But about 55% of the dollars were to go to improving air quality in our schools. So that's been very beneficial to us that we've had those dollars available. And then the other categories you can see, academic supports, technology, and back in the early days, of course, PPE and sanitizer and all those kind of things were paid for with this money. And these were just some guidelines that we followed for what the money was not for and what it could be used for. So when we look at our total spending right now, we're looking at, on the bottom bullet there, we are looking at annualized expenses of about $13.8 million that were not one-time expenditures, but ongoing expenses that many probably would like to see continue. So that's an issue then we have to deal with, because when the funding ends in September of 2024, we have to put, whatever we want to continue, we have to have a place to put it. And so what we decided to do was to take about 50% of those dollars and continue those beginning in September of 24. Or October 1st of 24. So within this budget, we have moved dollars effective that last quarter of 2024. This is why it's important we talk about this right now, because it's in that 24 budget that you're going to approve. So about $3 million of it will hit the last quarter of 24, and the balance of about $4 million will hit the 25 budget. And that will represent pulling in 50% of those annualized expenses. Now, to prepare for that, we did do a round of budget examination in the district to see if there were any other places that we could reduce budgets in order to make room for this. And we did have a net cut of about $2.8 million to help support shifting these funds into the education or operations fund. Generally, most of it was education fund.
So with those offsets, with that last bullet,
the $2.8 million.
Are we realizing that benefit right now?
Well, so in some cases, yes.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah, some cases we are. Some cases were going to be implemented later. Like if somebody knew there was a retirement coming next year, maybe at that point that's when will benefit from that.
So Rose is watching this like a hawk
yep,
over the next
she is.
8 or 9
yep.
months. Okay.
Yep. Okay, so this chart is just to make an impact in showing you like why we couldn't take the whole $13.8 million and keep it and put it in our education and operations fund. This is what could have happened to our cash balance in a short period of time. By 2028, our cash balance would be down to about 9%. And this is considering all the other things that we're looking at, like the fact that interest revenue may be going down, the fact that indirect cost is going down, and other factors. What might happen to state revenue in the future? What might happen to the operations fund? And we're trying to look at the whole picture, and this is what we are guessing could happen if we would have absorbed all of that. So the new plan that we have, absorbing just 50% of it, looks like this. So you can see cash balance is still going down, and that's kind of okay because we're sitting in a good cash position right now. And so the fact that we can go ahead and absorb some of this stuff for a while will be good. Now, as you can, imagine in 25, 26, this is something that the district's going to have to really look at to say, where are we today? Maybe things got better. Maybe there's some revenue sources that improved, and it doesn't look quite like this. But that examination has to happen all of the time to make sure that we don't let that get, out of control. So the ending balance here isn't perfect either, getting down to 18, 19%. That's not great either. I would want to be more in the 25 to 30% range, but there's time. There's time to absorb these expenses, see what happens, continue to evaluate whether they're working or not. And if they're not working, then maybe make some other changes. So, or maybe there's something that we're doing with ESSER that is more effective than something else we've been doing for a while, and maybe there's a trade-off that way too. So all of that will have to be considered. So that concludes the budget presentation. These are the key things that I talked about today. Because enrollment is maintaining, that's supporting our revenue, so that's a positive thing. The budget increase for the Education and Operations Fund is about 5%, keeping in mind, within there, we added in the ELL money that came over, and we also added in the $3 million from ESSER as part of that 5% increase.
Kathy, do we know yet how much of our textbook fees are going to be covered by the state?
Well, that's a good question.
Because I've been reading some things, some different districts have reported that,
what we're going to do, we're going to try to get as much as we can from, we will do a billing, like looking at what we already have in. We look at all the courses the kids have taken and all the books that we've delivered and come up with, like, if we really did do a bill, what would the total have been? And we're thinking that that's approaching about that $150 mark, which is what the state's talking about right now. But what we are also going to do is look at some other things that we've been doing in curriculum to say, these are things we could have passed on to parents, but we haven't. We're going to put those into the pot too and say, okay, this is what our number could have been, and that will be the number we submit. So we're going to try to, because we don't know what the real answer is going to be, we want to put as much as possible.
You've got to at some point report to the state
yes.
what our total textbook fees would be.
Yeah, we have to report it by the beginning of October is when we have to report it. So that is something that's being worked on right now, and so what we don't want to do is them give 170 and we only turned in 150. I mean, so we're gonna try to figure out, like, what could we have also added to that. We're in a lot better shape than in a lot of other school districts, I think, because you've heard a lot of other districts complaining that the amount's too low. But because we do the CSF loans and the STAA loans, and we're not charging parents for technology, that's been a big help. So we're not in the same position as a lot of other school districts. So I don't think I probably need to repeat all the rest of this. It's been a pleasure, and I'm open to any other questions you might have.
So the revenue this year is $317 million. As you walk down memory lane, what was that figure?
What'd you say?
Your first budget.
Oh, I don't know.
You don't know? You haven't looked?
I didn't. I should go back and look at that.
Steve probably has it in his files.
Well, I have it in my files too.
Must have been what?
See, you should have told me you were going to ask me this. I would have been ready for you.
$2 or $3 million?
Oh, come on. Right. I'm sure it was at least 100 something. So I don't know. I'll have to report back.
Is this the toughest budget you've put together? when you take a look at revenue and then expenses?
Well, I think just the whole ESSER piece of this required all this year we've been
More moving pieces?
looking at that. Yeah, I mean, and we didn't want to take, by chance and just wait till the last minute and make decisions about this, because these decisions have to be made by the start of the calendar year in order to let staff know that might be affected by these changes, because they need to take effect at the beginning of the school year. You can't cut things off September 30th, even though that's when the money ends. So there's been a lot of thoughtful discussion, and it's that piece. Yes, the rest of the budget has its normal kind of thing, but that.
Yeah, I thought your answer would have been, and Julie, I think, was around that after we got that $300 million cut from the state in 9 or 10.
Yeah,
10.
We had to cut 15 million, right?
Yep. That was, oh, you were comparing that. Yeah, that was, but that budget was done already, and then we had to strip it, is basically what we had to do. And that was really difficult because, people were already in their chairs on January 1st, and now all of a sudden, we had to cut $15 million, knowing those people were going to still be in those chairs through the summer. And so, yeah, that was a whole different situation.
Well, you got creative, right?
Yep.
And some of it was good, some of it was not good. We had to close a high school. But we ended up hiring Sodexo, which I think was a really great move for the district.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. We closed 2 schools, and that was unpleasant, for sure.
Pleasant Center, too, that's right.
Yep.
So after 24 years being honored as a Sagamore last meeting, which was very appropriate, if I get you for a second, which I know will be tough, take your filter off. Is there a magic bullet to funding? What is the one thing that could be done to help our district, your follower and Rosie, do her job from a funding perspective?
Well, I think that whole complexity piece is the biggest thing that needs to be resolved. And you need to and protect it. And fortunately, I do feel like the last few years that it could have been at risk, and I do feel like there's recognition that it's important, but it just, there are other people who don't think it's important. So it's something that you have to continue to protect and fight for, and there may be a better way to do it than the way it's done today, too. I'm not positive the way, although when we've looked at the study that was done, other states, there's a variety of ways that people do it, but it's not, nobody has really the right answer, I don't think. I don't know. And I think making sure that other areas are fully funded, like ELL and special ed, if they were fully funded, that would help the complexity piece, because then you'd have it all available to provide supports to the other kids. So that'd be my one thing.
Thank you.
Kathy, what are you going to do on November 1st?
I don't know.
Sleep in. Go out for breakfast.
I'm going to sleep in on November 1st. That's what I'm going to do. Yeah. So.
Kathy, I think that there's one thing that you've taught me since I came on the board, and that is that complexity piece. I mean, you've spent a lot of time on that, but I think what people don't understand is, and I think this is where you're going a little bit with this, is increasing the general fund to schools that don't have the complexity that we need, because that is where the people that I speak with talking about, well, we're going to give you more into your into the general education, but then we miss that complexity piece. That's not helping us. That's not getting any more equity for our students, right? So I appreciate the time that you've spent doing that and teaching us that, and that is something that I feel that we all need to pay attention to, and if we can, speak with our legislators and continue down that path that you have beaten down well, but we can continue to do that for you. So thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Kathy? Thank you.
Thank you.
And congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you.
That is the end of new business. And so that leads us to board member comments. Steve?
I was in a meeting Friday in Indianapolis. It was the quarterly meeting of the Board of Directors for the Indiana School Boards Association. And before we started our business meeting, we had a couple of speakers, Katie Jenner, and then a Dr. Tambra Jackson, who is the Dean of IUPUI School of Education. And after she finished her presentation, she looked at me and she said, "Steve, I started my career at Shambaugh Elementary School as a teacher, and Kathy Carr was my principal and mentor." So I asked her how many kids, students, attend IUPUI to become a teacher, and she said, "Not many." I said, "We need to get you up here and talk to us about what you offer." And I pushed her a little bit on that. I said, "We have a really good school of education at Purdue Fort Wayne. Isabel Nunez runs a good shop." But she says, "Look, there are young people who like going to college in a large urban city, and that's what we can offer." And I said, "Okay." So anyway, we've got a tie there, and I passed that information on to Superintendent Daniel. But another opportunity for us to inspire and encourage teachers to take a look at another school of education out there.
Did you ask her if she's ready for the big split?
Yes, she is.
Indiana
Yeah,
at Indianapolis
that's right.
and Purdue at Indianapolis, whatever they're going to call them.
Yeah, and what I learned from that was that the governance model for that split has IU Fort Wayne reporting to the IU Indianapolis folks.
Really?
Yeah, there's going to be a structure there where Dr. Chancellor Garrison is going to have a relationship with the IU Indianapolis campus.
Interesting. I don't have anything tonight.
I don't have anything tonight.
I just have an event coming up this Thursday at the Allen County Library, sponsored by Indiana Coalition of Public Education. Dr. Schaefer and Dr. Swinson, both educators, are talking about, their title of their program is "We Don't Vouch for Vouchers." So it's 6 p.m. Meeting Room A in the library. And just want to also give a shout out to the library, because their program will be recorded, so if you can't make it, you can get it, the link to it and see it on the library's website. But this wasn't an education event, but there was one a few weeks ago that we also had recorded with Paul Helmke was the speaker talking about gun violence. And sure, go ahead and record it, because we figured out that it was free to do that. And it was like so professionally done. They had more than one camera, following him around the stage, and we're like, wow, this is amazing. So just shout out to the public library for the great work that they do for anyone, really.
So does that mean they have the event on their website, on the library's website?
Yes, I believe, yeah, because there's a link
it?
to it. Yeah, so you want to watch
Nice.
it, you can see that, yeah. They're always very accommodating, so it's really nice to have that free service.
Nice. Thanks, Ann.
No comment tonight?
No comment.
No. Wow. That's amazing. Well, I'm glad to hear that they'll tape your event, because Steve, Raleigh, and I will be headed to the Council for Urban Boards of Education in Chicago at the end of this week. So looking forward to that. And then we'll have to watch your event online. So, all right, that is the end of my comments. Is there a motion to?
Move adjourned.
Second.
Thank you, Noah. Thank you, Steve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?